What is up, everybody? I'm Courtney.
I'm Sean.
And we are
Hill City Paranormal. You are
Paranormal.
now on the other side.
Tonight we have a really special guest, author Olivia James. I'm going to bring her on in just a brief moment.
The author.
But I want to talk briefly about spooky season. Okay.
Ooh.
We all, and let me know in the comments, all of us have been like investigating. I have been just
So,
following everybody's page, and everybody's heading to either a
Yeah.
residential or a location to investigate. Let me know how everybody's doing with that. How's everybody feeling? Is there a shift in activity during fall? I guess it's not officially fall, but during like the weather change and the geostorms and everything else going on. Like, let me know how your investigations are going.
How are you feeling?
Daryl, hello. Mama D, hello.
Mama D in the house.
All right, so without further ado,
shout out Bedford Paranormal, by the way.
That's right.
And Clover Hill Village.
Yes.
Hell of a location to investigate.
All righty.
All right.
Let's
Without
bring our guest.
Ado.
Let's bring our lovely guest, Miss Olivia James.
Hi, it's nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you. For those that are wondering, just due to the nature of the content of this show tonight, I'm not going to put out a disclaimer because everybody knows that we have an uncensored podcast.
Yeah, we don't know disclaimers here.
Out of respect for Miss Olivia and the nature of the content in which we're about to discuss, we are going cameraless, and that is all okay with us. So,
okay, sounds good.
If anybody has a problem, oh well, sorry for you. But Miss Olivia, tell us a little bit about you and what you do, and then we're going to jump right in it.
Okay. So I'm Olivia, and I have 2 books out. My books are called Gray Mouse series. One is called Sex, Space, and Mind Control, and the other one is called Gray Mouse Purgatory. So it took me about, I want to say, 3 years to get both out. And I'm working on a third one, actually. And a lot of it, the information came through in terms of when I was recalling memories from prior experiences that I didn't know had been suppressed or repressed. So I'm going to talk a lot about that tonight. And I want to get into a lot of the paranormal things since, that's kind of the focus. I'd love to be able to talk about that. Podcast won't let me discuss too much of it because it's pretty dark information, but it's so interesting.
So here at HCP Paranormal Podcast, although we are a paranormal podcast, we are uncensored, unfiltered. So
you talk about whatever the hell you want.
That's right. We talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. We've been looking forward to this podcast because there are a lot of things that we as human beings aren't aware of that are going on. Mental health, I've said this on previous podcasts, is real. A lot of us have suppressed past trauma and don't exactly know where to turn to for that or think that there's anybody else out there like them. So people like yourself who write books to help others definitely are a big plus to our community. So I'm going to let Sean take the lead because some of the things that you and I had discussed that we want to bring up, topic wise, Sean is more versed on than I am. So I guess pick a topic.
Well, I'm going to let Olivia run the show and I will elaborate with
all right. I'm ready.
You're ready.
I'm going to start. Okay, so I want to give a little bit of background because I think that's important for people to know how I actually came to have this type of paranormal life. So I'm going to start like in the beginning. I had very strange parents. And I had a very strange upbringing, out of the ordinary. So my parents were actually, my father was in the military in the 60s and he was in intelligence. He got recruited at a very young age, like about 18, from a small town. And when he got out of the military, he ended up working with various cartels and 3-letter agencies doing drug trafficking. And so things were going very well for him and my mother for a really long time. They were making lots of money. And then after a while, he started to get addicted to his own supply, and things went downhill very quickly. And he was messing up with, because he was working with huge powers, huge agencies, and that's not, you can't do that. So they tried to, wrangle him in by, there was a lot of targeting in terms of raiding his home and things like that. And there was this big, huge public trial. And in the end, he wasn't charged with anything after this, and they just let him go and gave him like a local government position. So what I've learned is that in order for him to stay out of prison, he had to give something up. And for him to do that, he ended up signing me, away. He thought he saved everyone kind of by doing that. So, and that's how I came to be in certain programs like MK Ultra. So for me, MK Ultra kind of started for me at 7 years old. And
Wow.
I was taken to a psychiatric hospital. It was on the East Coast. It's no longer open. But so these people there was the main handler. She was a woman, a female. And, I didn't grow up around types of people like her. So it was she seemed very otherworldly to me. I grew up in a very different lifestyle than, and it was so strange being around someone like her. I kind of looked up to her and everything. So it was very strange, almost like, when people get kind of, you know, associated with their kidnappers almost like in a way, and, sympathetic with a kidnapper, things like that. You kind of get, it's very confusing for a child to be in that environment. But what they were doing, they had this playroom, and they were using systematic psychological and physical and sexual abuse on us, because what they wanted to accomplish was trauma-based mind control, in which it splits parts of your mind into several different pieces, and when those pieces are pulled apart, they can reprogram those pieces. And what they were doing is trying to reprogram certain pieces to create alters. And those alters are what can be used to do jobs, to do missions, to do work for them. And that's pretty much, and it ends up being almost like slavery, because once they put this, inside of you, there's different codes and words and triggers that can push you into an altar, especially if they needed you. Sometimes they could, send a code to your phone, or a sound, and it triggers you right away. And that's how I kind of got the name Gray Mouse, because for me, that's been a major trigger my whole life. Just the words, just the sound, the images, everything. So when I found out that it was because it was a code word for me, that was a big, huge discovery. Like now, a lot of it makes sense. So now I can, watch out if I get a trigger, from like somebody that says something about mice, and sometimes it'll happen and sometimes it don't. It's very unpredictable. Like I won't know when the trigger is or why it happens. But once I realize it, then I can kind of do something about it. So when I was in this psychiatric hospital, there was only one other child in the particular program that I was in, and this little boy, his name was Jacob. So they were trying to do something called trauma twinning. And that is when they're trying to make us, dissociate and leave our bodies at the same time by giving us the same exact type of torture, the same exact type of abuse. And they were trying to see if they did that, is there some type of connection between us that could be created, that could be a strong energetic connection. And I remember one time when they were doing electroshock and kind of like LSD on us. It was me and Jacob, and we were in these beds and, being tortured and things like that. And this was, and I saw both of us, we had left our bodies. And that was like one of the only times that we were able to be like little kids there. So we left our bodies, and I could see Jacob like kind of like running around the room and in his spirit form, because of so much trauma to the body, your little mind can't handle it, your little body. So you move your spirit, you force your spirit. The mind is very strong. If you really think about it, the mind is so strong. You can do things that people wouldn't even imagine. And that is one thing that people can do. We were able to dissociate so far that we were able to almost leave our body. We were able to leave our bodies like in spirit form to escape the pain of it. So what the handlers thought there was that we were very good at that, and they considered us successful into the program. And so the main handler, she was using hypnosis, she was using a lot of, I remember seeing a lot of lights flashing where she was trying to train some of us for hypnosis and trance with a lot of lights flashing. She would use a needle in the palm almost she would have us put our hands, our palms up, and she would put a needle in the middle of the palm, almost like an acupuncture needle. And that was a way to kind of push us into like trance too. So there's a lot of different things they could do to induce a trance. And so after that, she would, once I was successful in what they call, taking to the abuse, and we were made to do what we could, she'd send a referral out to another place, and it was somebody called Dr. Green. And this doctor, when I went there, he's a very elderly, frail, thin man. This was like in, I don't know, maybe late 70s, early 80s. So very long time ago. So, and if anybody knows anything about somebody named Dr. Green, people say that it was Mangala. I only know from what I seen him when I saw him there that he looked very frail, and he had these little wire brimmed glasses, and he was very much balding. And so that's the only part of him that I know. I can't verify that, but that's what everybody, that's what common people kind of say. But anyways, so when I went there, he took me into this room, and in the room he had these two twins there, and they were very light colored twins, very light hair, almost kind of like albino looking. And he wanted them to do like an examination of me. So they started looking in my eyes and looking in my mouth, kind of weird, very weird things. So at the end of their examination, they turned to Dr. Green and they said, "We can see the thing inside her." And at that time, that's when they brought me into a project called Project Traveler. So there's a few projects, well, there's quite a few that people don't know that are intertwined with some shadow government agencies, that they're using the occult and, different psychic abilities to gain power in this world. So they thought that they could learn from me, because what they thought was that I had an attachment. They thought I had, like, I was possessed or something like that. That's what they thought. But in the psychiatric hospital, when I was doing hypnosis with the programmer there, what we were finding out, and what I found out myself and was able to expand on with my own trance, and mediumship, is that I had a lot of past lives are how I got chosen for this. And I was able to tell the programmer about my past lives, and that's how she referred me out. And one of the past lives, I was a dark entity. So in that particular lifetime, and this was ancient times, so it was a lot different than what we would think of today, in my opinion. So in those times, it was like these entities were almost like revered, or you know showered with praise. People, made, harvest to them, they sacrificed a harvest to them, all different types of things that they would do. So in our entity minds, we thought that we were like elder gods. That's how we described ourselves, as elder gods. We always, when an entity comes through, we always say, I'm God, I'm a god," because that's how we felt, because people showered us with praise all the time. So I was one of these kind of a dark jinn and a dark entity. And in that particular life, I was something that was parasitic. So if I found my particular, how I stayed alive is I would find someone, I like a prey. I'd find that person and I would kind of like stalk them until they finally let me into them. And most of the time they did. You stalk them enough and they would let you into themselves. And that's when I would take over as that entity form and kind of suppress them, and either make them hurt themselves or somebody else, or pretty much destroy their lives. And once I was done doing that, I would move out of them and find someone else. And I was moving through the blood, and when I can see myself in that particular ancient time life, I see myself as red energy, not particularly a physical form. I have seen myself in that life in physical form, and it's not pretty. And that part of me also says that, she does not like to be in physical, because she doesn't like the reaction that she gets when people see her. It's like disgust. And, in her mind, she's like, "I'm a god. Why would you be disgusted by me?" But when I saw it, it was
Right.
very gnarled and knotted, almost like troll like type of figure. It wasn't what we would think of like some of these, amazing, you know, pictures that we can see that people draw. It's not like that to me. That's not from what I see. It doesn't look like that. So of the lives that I had where Dr. Green thought would be beneficial. And there was also a few other lives that one of the lives I had, I was a medium myself in the 1400s in Italy. And in this particular life, I thought I was helping people. I was helping people talk to their past loved ones, in the village. And somehow the word got around to when the Inquisition came to town. They came there and they dragged me out of the house. They punched me in the face in front of my kids, and they, took me in a wagon and took me off to this, kind of like dungeon place. And they did all the things that you expect them to do, all the torture and the water and things. And I didn't die at the stake or anything like that. I actually died from starvation and dehydration because they had put me up, like they had me hanging from the ceiling with hooks, but it was, rope and hooks, but it was by my arms. So I had no feeling. It was pretty much, I had no feeling left. And it was a really sad life. And I was really, I think I remember being very angry at the end of that life because I had two children, and my my uncle had to take the children for me. He had to take my kids on because he knew I wasn't coming out of that place. Nobody came out of out of one of those places. When the Inquisition got a hold of you, there was no coming back. And I was so angry at men during that lifetime. And in the end, I tried to curse. I cursed them. Like, I hope, and I tried to call, like any energy. And what answered more was like a darker energy because of the rage that was inside me. That's when a darker energy answered to that. And that's all, that's very interesting. But I also had there's one more life that I thought was valuable, that how they chose me. And it was late 1700s, early 1800s. I was this, I was kind of like homeless as a child. So my parents had died very young when I was very young, and I didn't have anybody. So I found myself like traveling by myself to a lot of different cities, you know. And what I saw myself as, I was a male in that life, but I ended up being something of like a serial killer. And so I was traveling to these different cities and finding victims. And I ended up finding somebody that was like me. So me and him both, we're working together to, find helpless, women and harm them, whatever, on wherever we could find them. And we were doing it quite a bit. And I know that in that life, I felt a presence that was kind of looming over me, that was kind of egging me on. And that presence was this entity called Asmodeus. And he's very, very old and ancient, and he still has caught in that cycle of sacrifice, because in ancient times they sacrificed to him, and he loved it, so he has a hard time getting out of that. So I felt his presence in that life, and I felt a little bit, even when so let me tell you what happened. So we were getting very careless, me and this partner of mine, and we were going to the local tavern and just, drinking and partying. And we got people were caught on to us because we were the only, new people in town. And we had gotten one young woman in a field and left her there. And they knew it had to be us. So they chased us, and we ran to this farmhouse. And we locked ourselves in this farmhouse. And of course, they set it on fire from the outside, so we couldn't get out. But we tried to go high and go up in the rafters and everything. It just, the whole thing was set on fire. So I mean, obviously we kind of deserve that. But that's those three lives are kind of like very paramount to why they chose me for specific programs, because they feel like, yes, you have all these lives and all of that is still inside you. So I can't necessarily like delete or take out all of that, because how can you erase a past life, from you? It's all experience, so and it's obviously not me now and not the person I am now, but I also can't say that I would, I don't know if I could ever do anything over, because I don't know, because I was a different person in those lives. So it was really interesting to see, and I think a lot of people should explore that, like who you were before. I know it's scary, but it's been so eye-opening to me to see those different lives and how they can impact how you, behave in this life or how you feel in this life. It's so interesting to see that happen. So once they had me um in that particular program, they wanted to open me up to these entities. So there was one time that they had me in sensory kind of deprivation in a small room, and it was a dark room, and it was just me. I was a little kid still, and they had me just sitting in a chair by myself. They didn't give me any food. They didn't want anything to skew the results because they're trying to make stuff like this a scientific experiment. So they had me by myself. I was sitting in a chair. I had blindfold on, and they wanted me to open up in a way where I could allow something to take over me. And I did that for them, and they were trying to measure to see if they could measure any energy. They were, they were taking vitals and things like that to see what happened while I had those entities inside me. Because what I found is that once I open up, and like go in a trance and kind of, I have like an inner portal, and I'm able to allow these entities like to take over and speak through me. Almost of it's a voluntary possession. So I did that for them with a lot of different, and they put on a show. But what I thought was strange is these people, these humans, were the ones that were doing the torture and everything, and it was the entities that were sustaining me while I was in that chair. They're the ones that were keeping me alive because I couldn't eat or anything. They were keeping me, awake and alive, and it was the humans that were kind of torturing me. So that can be very conflicting in your mind when you think about it. Like if the humans are the ones harming me, and then it's these dark entities that are trying to keep me alive. So what the dark entities tell me is that it's because they always knew me, that I'm one of them. They can reach out to me. I can reach out to them. That's why we're so connected, is because I have a similar, almost like frequency to them. They can find me. They said I'm like a shining light somewhere when they, if I start to go in trance and open a portal, they said it's like a big, huge light shining, and like, oh, we can go now. She's, open for business kind of thing. So it's really interesting to see that happen. And so as I grew older, they wanted to use me for various other occult programming. And this is one thing that I thought was really strange. I was working for, and a lot of these jobs that I work for, it's all forced. Nothing is of my choice that I want to do or not to do. And really, if you're signed up for a government agency like that, a shadow agency, you don't have you don't have a say. You don't question it. You just have to, because otherwise it's threat of death. So you can't say no to anything they want you to do. So I was contracted to work for this agency called Monarch Solutions. And what they were doing, they actually have a lot of occult programming. And what they do, they have a catalog. And some of these people, I think we would call them like elites. They were able to purchase services from that catalog. And some of those services were, me, based on what I could do. What had they had been able to open up and allow me to do with, bringing that dissociation and that from that torture, I was able to open myself up. So they would purchase, and they were usually pretty nice to me. A lot of these families were nice to me because they were expecting a show. So what they would do, sometimes they would hire two of us. So they would have us come, and then they would do some type of ritual, or whatever they wanted to do. Sometimes they didn't do anything, and sometimes they only wanted to eat dinner with me, and that's because they wanted me to allow myself to get possessed, and they wanted to just eat dinner with their god. Because some of these families, they had something called, what is, like, they call it their personal daemon. That's how the word we use is daemon. I don't say demon, it was daemon. And that was something that they started back in, I think, in the 1500s. And that's what they discovered, this particular daemon. So this particular family was connected to a daemon called Bacchus, and they called themselves his followers. So they wanted to see him, they wanted to, worship him, and they wanted to meet him. So the way for them to do that is through me. So I would, lay on the ground, and I could go into trance and let Bacchus take over my body and speak to them, or sit at the table with them and talk. And they would ask questions and things like that. And Bacchus gets very pissed off because a lot of times they're asking goofy questions. They just called a god into this world. And there was one woman, I remember, she was asking about, was her husband cheating on her or something, and he was so pissed. He's like, "You called me here for this? How, pretty much, how dare you, disrespect me in this world by calling me here and asking these, he's pretty much saying, I'm a god and you're calling me here to talk about this nonsense, things like that. And he's very fickle in his favor, especially Bacchus. Bacchus is who they used to call Dionysus. So that's his kind of like preferred name. He calls himself Bacchus. So they would do that. And they also, from what I know, some of these families are trying to bring something called like children of the moon through. They think that if you have, sexual relations with somebody that is voluntarily possessed, you could possibly have like one of these moon children, which they think is almost like a demonic child. Like you can create one. If somebody's possessed while you have sex with them, it's they consider that to be like a moon child where you can, create kind of like your own, demon coming through to this world because they think it's part of his bloodline. If he was inside you while it was happening, they think that's what they think. So there's quite a few families that are in power that do this kind of thing. And the word spreads. The word definitely spreads, and they want, more and more of these beings through. And from what I know, Bacchus, when he talks, he's very irritated by this. He thinks this is just for show and they watch too many movies, and this is pretty much ridiculous, he thinks. And he definitely doesn't mince words. His tone is very sarcastic, and he gets very angry very quickly. He's very quick to anger. Isn't somebody that's slimy, seductive like some of the other ones. He's more like rage filled, and he would like to, he's always threatening them. Like, if you don't get yourself
Right.
together, I'm gonna, clear all you out of the room and do this and do that. So he's very upset with his followers right now. That particular family he's upset with because they had to go through some type of court case that happened with their business. And so they don't have the money to do as many rituals as they used to. And he thinks that's total BS. He's like, what? Because a lot of these elder gods, these demons, they think that if they don't have anybody to worship them, they're dying. They say they told me that their race is dying because it is very much predicated on the fact that people are, worshiping them. If they don't have
Right.
worshipers, they're going to die. If they don't have believers, they'll fade. They'll fade away and pass away because there's nobody there to follow them or worship them. So these demons they're saying that a lot. And they're also, a lot of these demonic entities are also saying that, well, they told me in the beginning there was this huge wall put up where they can't pass back and forth, just as much as they'd like to. And they say that's where that old vampire legend comes from, that you invite them into your space. They said that came from them because they very much have to be invited into you. And a lot of people do
Which,
invite them in.
not to interrupt you, to kind of touch on that a little bit. We've got some comments coming in, and I want you to go ahead and explain that piece to it. Ronnie had said, Ronnie Anderson, shout out Bedford Paranormal, is asking, you don't feel like it's dangerous to let someone or something into you like that? Or were you not given a choice being that you were in this program?
At the beginning, I wasn't given a choice because I was a child. I didn't have a choice. It was a force that take over me. And also the fact is that I am one,
Right.
I
She
can't.
said back in her former life, she was a dark entity.
Right.
Yeah. And I can't get rid of that. So that's why I'm so good at this. And that's why I don't recommend it to anyone else. I can do this, but I don't think, because I don't get psychologically or physically damaged by this. And I do this quite a bit. I do this all the time, and I record it and everything. So it's just, I could do it for probably 4 hours and have demons take over my body and talk and give all this information. And then after that, I wake up and I have a sandwich. That's not a normal thing for other people. That they can't do that. So, but I don't
Right.
recommend that to other people. This is something that's particular to me. It's my own ability that, I have, and not everybody. I'd rather take the risk, and because I know I can do it and I can be okay. So
What I'd like you to do, though, is back up a little bit as well, because
yes,
you explained a lot. And
I know.
I'm able
I'm sorry. There's a lot of information.
don't be sorry. Don't
It's a
be sorry.
lot.
This is I'm able to follow you on a lot, and there's a couple people in here who can follow you a lot, but
Okay.
there's some people who may not be able to. And like I'm I've been a big thing on. I'm prior military myself, and explain MK Ultra a little bit because you kind of touched on it, and
Yes.
I know you're very knowledgeable about that. But let's explain to our listeners and people who may go back and watch this podcast a little bit more about what, because MK Ultra is something that's very much going on today, and
Yes.
I do believe, in my personal opinion, now people don't hold me to this, and you can disagree with me too, but I do believe a lot of events that are taking place today, especially around election time, MK Ultra still takes a huge play into what's going on with a lot of controversy and conspiracy that goes on today,
Mhm.
in my personal opinion. So, explain to everybody what MK Ultra is and what it does.
Yeah, it's a program for mind control, basically. It basically means mind control, and that they have set up to not only control the world, but definitely control specific people because they want to make assets out of them. That's what they call us, assets. We're commodity to them. They're able to make money off us. They're able to gain power with us doing some of the work. They had us doing a lot of different jobs. I didn't only do the occult stuff. They had us doing like corporate espionage. I even worked out on a different planet. They have off planet um, bases that they have. And I was actually working on one of them for a while, and that was really interesting. But there's so much that has gone on, and that are going on behind the scenes that people don't know about, and that's why I do this, so people can be aware that there's so much out there that we have not even been able to tell people. And so it's important for, disclosure, for us to let people know that there are these programs, things that are happening, and children are being used pretty much, and they're tracking specific. So as far as I know, and it was a discovery for me too, they're tracking specific people, and not saying these that I'm better or worse than the next person. It's just they felt by who who my bloodline was, they felt like that I may have had some type of innate abilities, and they were right. I just didn't know it. And even as I got older, it took me, I think I was in my 40s before I figured out that I could do all this stuff again. It had been like completely taken from my mind. And I ended up having like a near death experience. And after that, in the years that followed that, I had that in my late 30s. In the years that followed that, that's when I started to have conscious recall, memories of things that I couldn't explain, paranormal experiences that were getting stronger and stronger, and a lot of entities. And let me tell you, I was terrified because I have always been terrified of this stuff. And I didn't know why. I mean,
Right.
literally like a phobia almost. Like I'm terrified. I slept with the lights on until, just a few years ago when I learned, when I became more awakened. I was terrified of everything.
So let's jump around a little bit.
Yeah.
So, um, because a lot of the information you've given is just mind blowing, and it's incredible. Your story is just is fascinating. But just from listening to things that you've told us previously before this show, the MK Ultra thing is fascinating to me, of course, just because I'm a conspiracy theorist myself. And then you talked about how they used you to do different things. Let's talk about some of the things where you were mentioning how the government uses paranormal and these demons to control things that are going on in the world.
Yeah, there's actually, this is really cool. Well, not cool, but interesting. They have there's this group, and they're called the board. So the board is using technology and using people like me, like they call them portal people. They're using that to try to pull, open up this hole to what they think is hell. And so I help them, do that because it's easy for me to do that. But they're like addicted to it though, because they're addicted to that power. They're addicted to that unknown part. And like that dark side is pulling them so much. And I tried to warn them. I said, if you keep going down this road, it's gonna make you crazy. It's like when I opened up that door, it was the strangest thing. It was like almost like being in a world of like screeching and howling and like noises that you're not used to. It was a total different type of frequency to the ears, like an auditory frequency. It was screeching and howls. So that's the only way I can describe it. And they're very excited to pursue this further, and they're going to keep going. they said they're going to keep going to do this. And like I said, a lot of the power players are using this to find their own personal demons because they think that gives them power. And a lot of these demons, some of the ancient ones like Bel or Isis, and I know Isis has like kind of like this reputation for being this beautiful, lovely creature. And she might have a side like that. That's true. You know, other people have a different experience. But from what I saw and from what she tells me, she is very much a creature. She's an angel of darkness to me when I see her, because they had me doing this. And during my first, initiations and thing, they had me rebirthed under her. They called it being rebirthed under Isis. And they make you kind of like dress up in this cow, like almost like it looks like a cow headdress. It has like these horns. And she says that her highest level of gift to a follower of hers, that it's almost like she pulls you into her domain, and her domain is a bright desert, and she wants you to walk, and there's like this long road. She wants you to walk that road until you die. She thinks that's a gift to her followers, that take them inside of you. She always says like, take of me, take of my body, come inside me, kind of thing. And then she wants to take that, take your life. And and there's people offering themselves. There's like almost like a new cult to Isis, and she said that she wanted to thank everybody for bringing her back to life, because now if you look around, everybody's got tattoos of Isis. They think she's this beautiful goddess, and that she said to tell everybody, thank you for doing that, thank you for opening the hole to this world so she could come back and be alive again, almost. That's what she told me anyways.
So how were you able to escape all this and get out of that?
Well, you don't escape. I did, like I said, I did a lot of this occult work. I did a lot of something called beta tracking, and that is a particular type of job where they have you infiltrate somebody's life. They call them a mark. You infiltrate their life, you gather intelligence or do whatever they want you to do to the person, if you know what I mean. And then once you're done with that, you move on to the next job. And I did that for quite a while. I didn't have a choice. And once I was done with that, they said that I would get a promotion for a job well done. So they sent me to this off-planet base for a particular faction called MDF. And I was under a specific division of that base called Mariner. So my division was called Division Mariner. And it was kind of more like a ground force battalion. But in that particular position, I was doing something that would be considered corporate work or human resources work. So when I was doing that, so it was a promotion, and I all the kind of like the heavy work. I got to, have an office in that. But I hated that job because they had trained me as a profiler. So, and in terms of profiling, I would have recruits coming into the office, new recruits that were going to be working on the base there. And I would keep them in my office for, I don't know, about an hour. And we would go through all these different, like a battery of kind of like questions. But the whole questioning is not just because I needed the answer, but all the answers are within, the person's body language, their eyes, even sometimes they even admit an odor that you can tell, like you can read somebody by so many different things. So that's what I would do. And I was working under a general. His name was General Asher. So I would, make up these reports based on who came in the office, and, I would send the recommendation up, and I would place them in certain jobs around the base. So I did that for a long time. And my whole term of service ended up being 20 years. And then after 20 years, they give you these chemicals that kind of like age you back. Like there's, definite, scientific way that they age you back to where it started. And then they almost kind of push you back to where it started and take your whole memories, everything. So a lot of this is lost to many of us. All of these information is lost to us. We don't remember this. But you always know something's wrong. You always know you're different. You always know it's not normal. And, at looking back, I can see all the differences now, but going through life, a second life almost, I didn't know for a long time. So,
I mean,
yes.
like I've got to ask the number one question. This subject has always been, now I was taught, if I'm wrong, please correct me, but I was always taught that speaking on the subject of government conspiracies, MK Ultra, etc., puts a literal moving target on your back. How are you able to sit there if if you're no longer currently in the program, uh and basically name people and things like that and be protected?
Well, I had that. So actually, I felt more in danger before I said things publicly. I felt more in danger,
Really?
and I was actually getting more threats before I started to be public. Before, the reason I wrote the books is because then I could have public information, and then they kind of backed off. The V2K kind of stopped. So before I was doing that, when I was getting memories, it could be like where I was just trying to meditate to practice, my trance states for myself, to keep my ability going. I would start to practice. And as soon as I did it, I heard a voice, and it's V2K, which is voice to skull technology that they use. I heard the voice that said, if you come any closer, we're going to take everything from you. I literally heard that. And I was like, I wouldn't say that to myself. Like, this is
Right.
not me. This is not me saying this. And I've had demons talk. They wouldn't say that to me either. They never do. They're not worried about me. They're worried about talking about themselves. So I'm like, okay, this is something different. But it would go on a lot when I first started to get memories, and this was before I had the books. And it was, and I was paranoid. I was scared. I was anxious. I was panicked. Every emotion you can think of, every question that you're thinking of now, I had these questions for myself. All of it. I was always questioning everything that was happening to me, and that I was discovering, that I was thinking, that I was seeing, that I was experiencing. It was all for me the same, like, huge, like, mind-blowing journey to me. Like, every time it happened, or every time something happened, even if it was small, it was a huge deal to me. So it consumed my life for, I think, I've been doing this now for about 6 years, is my huge awakening where I started to get these memories back. So, and then how I learned that I could do, some of the trance work, mediumship work, and what I call psi remote viewing. I do a type of remote viewing that's not just using coordinates. It's kind of using my whole psychic abilities, all of it, in order to go somewhere and see someone and see what they're doing. Or I can go and view, inside, like, certain bases. I've tried that. I can go and view past lives, other people's past lives. I can talk, what I call talking to someone's brain. I do this. It's like talking to different parts of them. You can talk to somebody's higher self or a different part of their personality. There's so many different pieces of a person you can talk to, like the heart, the soul, the solar plexus. There's all these different pieces of a person you can connect to and talk to. So you're never going to get the same answer. It's always going to be different. So I just thought that was really interesting.
I mean, that makes sense. It seems like more people are starting to come forward with
Yes.
this information here lately. Um, I remember you also mentioned before that they use sex as well as a way to manipulate and control people, as well, and control events. I remember
Yeah.
you mentioned that earlier, and you mentioned that as well, when you wrote us initially.
Yeah, and it's monarch type. That's what they consider monarch training. Initially they use sexual abuse because they wanted to create like a sexual altar, because this particular sexual altar can manipulate and use that. And whether you think so or not, it is very effective in particular times to either gather intelligence, or to keep yourself in a certain position. That's Sex can be used as a weapon in those particular situations, and that's been proven
Absolutely.
in some of these programs, that it can be used as a weapon even by women. You know what I mean? And it's almost like you have to become very manipulative, but it's also a way to keep yourself safe, especially if you're an altar. You kind of block out other stuff, all the other empathy and all the other feelings. You block that out. And I know for a fact they would program us to consider the only main thing that you should be thinking about is the job, is the mission. There is nothing else. And if you start to think about something else, then you've already fucking failed, they said. It's already a fail if you start thinking about something else. Because I know that I've done jobs with other people. And as soon as they start having, all they have to do is have one look that looks like you're worried, you're pretty much in danger then, because you can't do that. You can't show worry on your face, because then, anybody that might be against you knows that you're scared. You can't do that. That's a fail. That's considered a fail. You can't do
So
that.
I gotta pop a question that's gonna make people probably hate me, but I'm real and I'm straightforward, and I
Yeah.
always speak my mind. But I've always had a question in the back of my head that and I'm gonna get political for a minute. I know we're not a political podcast, and I'm not gonna go left or right, but I gotta ask this question, being that I'm talking to you. I've always believed that a lot of events, such as school shootings, such as a lot of crime that's happened in the media that made people hate each other, a lot of race baiting and stuff that goes on. Do you feel that this has to do with a lot of what you're talking about with the
Yes.
MK Ultra, the control of a higher
Yes.
power?
Yeah.
I've always thought that this stuff isn't just random. It's not just some random idiot that's going out doing this stuff. I always felt somewhere that somebody was, the MK Ultra especially, was always there was always somebody being manipulated to do certain things. And I'll give you one of the cases in my head that sticks out. The one where the kid went into the movie theater during the Batman premiere and shot the people in the movie theater. If you watch that kid during the court case, during his arrest picture, he looked like he had no clue what was
Mhm.
going on. He looked like he didn't even know where he was. And I
Those are
always
Manchurian
said that kid
candidates.
looks like that was MK Ultra. That looks like MK
Mhm.
Ultra all day to me.
It does to me too. And those are Manchurian candidates. They definitely have some of those that they're training, early on as children to, and they put that altar so deep, it doesn't come out until you need it. So that's when they're saying like, "Oh, this kid was such a nice kid. He was helping us cut the grass and all this." And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden he's, killed a million people and nobody knows what happened.
I've
The
always
altar
thought
is so deep, you won't know until they trigger you with a code or with a word, anything. There's so many different ways that they can trigger you. Who knows if they were taking them into a doctor's office, sitting them in a chair and doing who knows how they were triggering this person. But I know when you get told that, when you get an altar takes over. So I had this, so okay. So when I left
Hold on for a
my job.
second. Go
Okay, go
ahead,
ahead.
Howie. You can go there. And again, I want to throw a disclaimer. Olivia, I don't mean to interrupt you. You're
No, you're
great.
fine.
You're great. This
Very knowledgeable.
again. This very knowledgeable. Again, what I'm saying may offend people, so you can tune out now. But again, I'm very real. I like to speak my opinion and my thoughts. And again, these are my opinion. But this is a subject I've been wanting to talk about with somebody who actually knows what they're talking about, because I've done extensive research on MK Ultra and different government injections and things that are coming out, which Howie's talking about.
Good
And
question.
Olivia, if you can see the screen, I definitely want you to respond to that, because I have a theory on that as well. I do honestly believe that a lot of events, so now I'm gonna throw this disclaimer out there as well. I do believe there's a bunch of assholes out here that are idiots that just want to take their daddy's gun and go out and do stupid shit
Yes,
with
there
it.
is. There
I
are
do
people
believe
like
that.
that.
But
There
the
are,
stuff that I
yes.
see on the news, especially around election time, and I'm not going to say who I'm voting for, which direction I go. If you're on my personal Facebook, I'm sure you know by now. But what I will say, especially around election time, it seems like every year these shootings ramp up. It seems
Mhm.
like when there's something going on in the world and the America wants you to sway one way, all of a sudden there's a massive shooting. There's a cop that shoots an innocent unarmed black man. There's some girl that gets something happen to him that was innocent. And it seems like to me that always happens during a certain time of the world that's going on. So Olivia, you've answered my question. I appreciate that. But Howie has a question on the screen. He says, how do you feel about the C virus? Do you feel that there was something with the injection?
I I really don't know a ton about that. I only know from my personal experience that being in the programs, they give you so many chemicals that when you're done with it, your body, we look young on the outside, but our bodies are deteriorating. They're almost like rotten on the inside. They're so many of us are having these major health issues at a very young age, like, liver issues and things like that. Like me, that's, it's not normal to have like, almost liver failure at a, without having any, major, addictions or something like that. It's not normal. So it's really strange because they gave us, so it's not out of the ordinary for certain injections to be, in certain programs. We had it, for a long time, getting these chemicals, and it's kind of like destroyed our bodies. So we're all trying to fight back. If you ever interview other people like me, they'll talk about their health issues and what has happened like that. That's almost like even a control factor too, that they're keeping you ill. There's Oh, do you want me to continue, or do you
I
have
was
any?
just going to say one
Yeah.
thing. I just have never seen in my lifetime, I've never seen them force an injection the way that they did the coronavirus vaccine.
Hmm.
And I almost feel like, I, like Sean, am also a conspiracy theorist. So I almost feel like, why are you pushing this so much on America? Why are we pushing this? Like, is there something else in the injection? Because every single person I know that's vaccinated has gotten coronavirus multiple times.
Hmm.
Like,
Well,
so,
the injections they gave us, there's always stuff in it because they
right.
were trying to make you, they were trying to make us more of what we were. They wanted you better. They wanted you at the top, at your top, whatever, whatever. But it takes so much out of you to be that. They always wanted you to be heightened. They always wanted you to be ready. It's very hard on the body to constantly, have medications. And especially when I was a kid at the psychiatric hospital, they gave us LSD. I mean, that's not good for a forming child, that, imagine having that in your body as a child. So there's a history of us, people just getting, like, there's a lot of us that were in MK Ultra. It wasn't just a small amount. There's tons of kids, especially, at Montauk and things like that. There's a lot of other places. I was just one project in, one little area, a very small one. There's other bigger projects like the Montauk project and things like that. So what I
Yeah.
was going to talk about is, um after I left my term of service. I did 20 years, and after I left that MDF, division, they let me come back home, and I went back to my normal life. But before I left, they have this huge stack of forms, and all the forms, they have all these different verbiage and, legal language and things like that. And pretty much, before you leave, you're forced to sign something that says that you agree to be, monitored for the rest of your life, pretty much. And also on my particular forms, it said that I was coded for reentry. That means at any time I agreed to work for them at any age. And obviously we don't remember signing that. We don't, none of us do, but it's there nonetheless. They always say that, you don't remember this, but it's still there. The information, the signature is still there. You still signed it. And they say they're using something called a universal template, which they say can stand up in any court. And they're talking about on Earth, out there, galactic court, anything. They said any other court. So it's really strange that they're able to pull that off. They have a lot of power. These people, we're talking about people that have power beyond, what we consider just in our normal world. It's very different to be able to, know about something like that, that there's a huge power like that.
Now, D Downs wants to know. You got a couple questions here from our listeners. And Olivia, I think we're going to have to do a part two if you're down for it, because
Yeah. Okay.
you've got so much great information in your story. It's just it's mind blowing. And I want to thank you again for coming on. But the first question is, how did you find out specifically? This is from D Downs, that it was LSD that they were giving you.
Yeah. So when I started to do hypnosis, I initially started to do hypnosis because of the Monarch training. I was having some sexual addiction issues. So I wanted to deal with that. And that's why. So initially I started hypnosis. It wasn't for anything related to this. It wasn't for paranormal. It wasn't for any of this. It was related to getting myself emotionally stable and being at a point where I didn't want to harm other people. I don't want to harm myself. I wanted to make sure that I was good because, I'm a normal person. I have a normal life. And, I didn't understand why I was so fucked up in a way like that wasn't normal to other people. I was like, this is not normal for somebody like me. And I needed to find out why and what I could do. It was more for healing But in that first session, it was just balls to the wall, the strangest experience. I mean, it's like my whole soul like opened up. I mean, I was able to get any information that I wanted to get throughout any time period, anywhere. There was no limit. And I think that's for anybody. If the mind is so powerful, if you wanted to do the same thing I do, you can do it. You just practice. It takes a little practice. It takes a little bit guts to go down that road. So I found out that I could do something called side remote viewing, and that's using all these different, psychic abilities to view, situations. Like if I view that situation of when I was a kid in that hospital and I was in the playroom where they did a lot of the torture, I'm there. I can see it. I'm like almost standing in the corner like a ghost, because when I'm side remote viewing, I use the ghost dimension. I know because I've gone to people's houses and I've stand right behind them when I'm looking, just trying to see what they're typing. Like if it's one of these handlers, I stand right behind him. I can see what he's typing. And in the corner, I saw a ghost, and that ghost saw me, and it was his grandmother. And she was pissed off that he was being such an asshole, about hurting people. So it's very different, and it's very, crazy that to know that I'm using the same dimension that ghosts are traveling in to see these people, what they're doing. And that's how I found out about the LSD. I was able to view the situation of what's going on. And if anybody wanted to research remote viewing, it's very researched. There's a lot of information out there about it, and there are lots of scientific, experiments and information even on certain websites, the three-letter agency websites. They have an archive that even has a lot of information about remote viewing, and they use that actually for some of these agencies. They really got into remote viewing, and they were, training and testing people for this ability, because it's a real thing. They've had a lot of projects for remote viewing. So
Okay.
that's how I learned about that.
That's very interesting, and I'm definitely going to look into that myself.
I mean, that makes sense, because when we talk about something,
it's almost like an outer body experience.
yeah, but like when you
Yes.
talk about something or whatever, like your phone comes up with the advertisement, like
Right.
you didn't even type it in. You're just
Yeah.
having a conversation in your home.
Right.
Or it's in your mind and it pops up. Now that's crazy.
I've
That
seen that
happened.
happen too, yeah.
I've had that happen.
That's
Yes.
that's that technology we don't know about yet.
Yeah.
But Ronnie Anderson said, as far as the CVAX, how many times did they tell you the side effects? Question mark. Every advertisement of any drug has a list of side effects, and that's very true. They pushed and pushed and pushed this vaccine, and those of you who took it, bravo. You did what you did. I explain people my opinion on those of you who took that coronavirus vaccine. You did what you had to do to feel safe. I don't knock anybody for doing. That's your choice. However, me as a conspiracy theorist myself, anything that and as a former military guy myself, anything the government pushes on you to do, you just kind of you turn a blind eye to it. But he has a point that this any other pill or new medicine that comes out on TV. Look at all the side effects that comes out. How come the CVAX didn't have them? That's a good point.
Yeah.
You got any thoughts on that, Olivia?
I'm with you on all of it. I've had the same thoughts. I try to, I'm a conspiracy theorist too, obviously, because of what I went through. I have
Yeah,
to. I
obviously.
have to question constantly. It's like
Yeah.
I don't want anybody coming near me with anything without my permission, because I know what they did back in the past. Like, why would I let them do it again? If they've already done this
Yeah.
kind of stuff to a lot of us, why would I, allow it?
I mean, let's talk about that vaccine for a second. Again, this is getting kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Heavy. And we're not a political show. Normally, we don't talk about this stuff, but since you're on here, we're going to do it. We're going to go there. I remember when the vaccine was first coming around, they were forcing, almost getting to the point where they were forcing it. I remember they were telling people that they would lose their job if they didn't get it.
I was one of them.
Yeah, they were trying to force people to. They were pretty much telling people, "Hey, you can't work here unless you have this vaccine." And I'm thinking to myself, how can you tell somebody or force somebody to take a vaccine that has no extensive research behind it? And you're talking about a virus that's been here for years and years and years. A virus that's pretty much a cold. But you can't a vaccine. People die of the common cold daily. People die of the flu. people die of pneumonia, but yet this coronavirus comes around, and those of you who have lost people to coronavirus that's watching this show, my condolences go out. And I mean, no disrespect, but at the same time, you can't force me to do something because you feel unsafe. And that's one thing that's why I lean to government conspiracy on a lot of things. And a lot of people may think I'm crazy for it. And I think it, but you're listening to somebody who's been under the influence of government conspiracy. I'm telling you firsthand that there's things out here that we shouldn't be paying attention to everything they try to force feed us.
Well, see, and Ronnie said, I worked in the pharmaceutical field for 12 years. You can't get a drug past no less than 18 months without extensive research and development. Okay. With that being said, I was one of the people that was told either get vaxxed or lose your job. What I did is, being myself, I went and found loopholes in these rules. I got, an exception. I personally did not participate in the vaccine solely because of how bad it was being pushed. Again, like Sean said, not to get political. It's just my personal beliefs. I don't know what you're trying to put in my body. And, I'm sure everybody's DNA is in a log somewhere.
Absolutely.
But,
Olivia can confirm that one.
Oh, yeah.
I already know we're being watched with our cell phones, with, our vehicles that have OnStar, with, God, the list goes on and on with how we're being watched, televisions, 4K, 5K TVs, things like that. We're being watched. But I'm a small man on the totem pole, so I don't feel like they're going to come knocking on my door for anything. I'm not like researching how to bomb something or anything crazy like that. I just, that the coronavirus vaccine was something that was very weird to me, how it all came out. And I've tested positive for corona 3 times. And the last time, my last experience, Sean was present for, I watched this virus where people were showing up in hazmat suits, like a scene out of the movie E.T., to deal with people that were corona positive. And, this past December, I got really sick, had a high fever, very, very high fever, and ended up in the hospital. And to watch people come in and handle me with no gloves, no mask, no care in the world, made me question even further, like, why were we creating mass panic 4 years ago? Why now is it okay and we're okay with it? Type deal.
How come people aren't dying from it anymore?
And we don't, well, they are, but those numbers aren't being publicized.
But the thing is, what I mean by that is people are dying from it still, but it's not a big issue anymore.
Yeah, it's not because of the media.
Exactly.
The media hasn't made it a big issue. Ronnie said Chinese have been eating bats for thousands of years. An election year, this pops up. Exactly. Mom said the coronavirus vaccine does have definite side effects, but could keep you from going on a ventilator.
So does washing your hands.
Yep. So a lot of people, as an employee in the healthcare field, there's a lot of secondary things that cause that ventilator to come about. This virus is a respiratory virus. It attacks your respiratory system. So if you already have a pre-existing condition, such as, COPD, asthma, things like that, you definitely are at higher risk. Daryl said the virus itself was to weed out the weak from the strong. I think it was a way to get rid of the old. It helps Medicare. That is a good point there.
That's a good point.
You know what I'm saying? Everything that the government does, in my opinion, has to do with population control. Or control of some sort.
There was a politician that said it. We're going to work on population control.
And that was Pamela.
And
I'll call it out.
I'm not going to try to sway anybody, anything, but that's what was said in a recent. I don't know what you want to call it, when they go to speak to the crowds. That we're going to work on population control. I don't know what that means when somebody says that, but again, we're not trying to get too political here. I do, but when we're talking about conspiracy and the things that Olivia speaked on, the coronavirus, or speaked on, spoke on. I'm sorry. Thanks for calling me out on that. Spoke on, it all seems to tie into a lot of what she's saying.
I definitely, though, to kind of bounce off of what Sean said, I absolutely want to bring you back up for a part 2 because my interest and I've got so many questions that would keep everybody. I mean, we could probably talk for hours, but my number one primary interest that I want to start the show off next during part 2 on is the grooming of children. Because
especially with MK Ultra,
this is going on in all aspects, through subliminal messages, through media, and now you're shedding light on a whole program that's grooming children. And right now our children
she straight said it. She straight said it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Our children are our future. So we really, as we're dealing right now with the MS-13 sex trafficking, these government programs that Olivia was a part of. You've got the media telling kids to do A, B, C, and D. Mass panic spreading on the internet, TikTok,
and using entities beyond our knowledge to assist with this stuff.
Ronnie said, truth fact, I went to the doctor, ER tested positive for COVID. No doctor or nurse treated me with proper PPE. That was a red flag for me when I went in December, Ronnie, so I understand.
Yeah, that was right at Bedford.
Yvette said, I was also told I had no choice if I wanted to keep my job in the health field, but I did find a way around it the second time. Woo woo, congrats to you, because there's always a way around it. And Ronnie touched on something that I was saying, TikTok, IG, they're shaping the future. We are grooming children.
Yeah, Olivia, how do you feel like these social media platforms, is that anything to do with the stuff you're talking about?
I think all of it has a place for it. I was going to tell something of a more, we kind of were talking about this, but I was going to tell this story. It's a short one, I promise. And it's, I was taken to this, I don't know, I was taken by a private military, and they wanted me to get this information out to people, this particular information. There's a group right now that's on Earth. They're called the Olympia group. And these are kids. They're about 12 to 19 years old right about now. They call them the Olympia group. And these are the computer kids. So I'm sure we all know kids like this that are like attached to their computers. But why these kids are so important is that in 15 years, there's a private military group that saying that there's going to be a real revolution where we're trying to take the power back after everything. So basically what we're doing now is setting the stage for these future children to take over, because we're going to be too old by then to do anything. We're setting the stage for them. But they told me that these children need to be protected at all costs, because they are going to be very important, because with how advanced technology gets in the future, a lot of the war is going to be technology based. It's not going to be hand-to-hand combat and things like that. It's going to be based in technology, and we need these computer kids. And it sounds silly, but they're very serious about that. They were even trying to give me names of kids, and I can't remember them all, but it's like they were saying that to give the message to people, protect children, make sure they're safe, because if we don't have these kids, that, because a lot of these kids, they're growing up, like if I try to do something on the computer, I'm not techie like that, but I can find a 12-year-old that can probably set the whole thing up in like 5 minutes with no problem. So they're telling me that these kids need to be off cost, and that the people that are in power know who these kids are. They already know that these kids are important. So they're going to try to throw them off course by, blowing up their lives, trying to push some of them in towards addictions and things like that. So they can't be what we need them to be in the future. So this is very much a speech from whoever these people were to protect children right now, because they're going to be the ones taking over the revolution. We're setting the stage by getting the disclosure. You guys, everybody that's talking about this stuff, we're setting the stage to awaken people and to help get that movement started, and they're going to be taking over the real battle.
I mean, it's already, what you're talking about has already happened. Look in the last couple of years how many times somebody hacked the government or hacked the oil company and shut things down. I mean, Microsoft recently, and I remember we couldn't get a UPS package because everything was shut down. I mean, it's all, so what you're speaking of is already in effect.
Isn't it interesting that I thought it was interesting that they're saying these are the ones, because a lot of us are telling our kids get off the computer, brighten your brain, get off, and I'm like, maybe I shouldn't say that anymore.
Yeah, maybe we need to think twice about saying that.
Yeah, maybe they're going to be the ones saving our lives here in a little bit. When we're old, like we might need these kids.
Right.
So I get it, and it was a very important message. So they wanted me to make sure I told people that to protect these kids at all costs.
So D Down said, "How do you feel about the Indigo kids?"
That's similar to what I'm talking about. These I don't want to say they're chosen, but maybe they chose this to come in and help at a certain time. Who knows what well, none of us really know, and everybody has their own personal experience of it. I mean, I've had a personal experience of seeing the in-between place, like where before you choose a life, what happens. That's only personal to me, that I've had that experience. I don't know what other people see when they go to that, but that's what I saw. Is there was a time in the in-between place that I met with a guide, and he asked me, he's like, where do you want to go? He's like, and he was very informal. You want to go forward? You want to go backward? You can go anywhere. And, I was thinking like, hey, I'm going to go way forward or way backward, because there's no time. You don't have to it's not linear time. You can do anything like that. It's like, I can go in the ancient past, or I can be here. I can go in the future. It was really interesting to see that. So who knows if they decided to come in and help during this time. They chose to be part of this Olympia group. These kind of more, not saying advanced, because we're all advanced. I don't think there's like a hierarchy between us. I just think maybe they chose it and they're ready, and they knew what they had to do when they came here. And some of them are going to be naturally very technologically advanced, or just very good at computers, very good at, things like that.
Right.
Well, let me ask you a quick question, Olivia. 1A, are you free November 19th?
Let me look and see if I can put you
for a part 2, because there's just so much.
Yeah, we got a lot more to talk about.
I have so many questions. I've got like a going list right here.
Okay, yeah, I can put it on my schedule.
Okay, so guys, you heard it here. For part 2, we will meet with Olivia again, November 19th, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yeah, I'm just floored by the information given.
Yeah.
I don't want to ask you any questions that are too personal.
Yeah, first 20 minutes of the show, I was just like,
there's so much more. I was very light on a lot of stuff.
Well, that's why we need a part 2, maybe a part 3, part 4.
I mean, on subjects like this, I don't think there's really like a time frame that you can set.
Because, there's not.
These are all things that we've sat here and we're kind of questioning in the back of our mind. And now you, Olivia, are bringing it to light for people as somebody who was actually involved.
Yeah, and you're helping. You're part of, now you guys are part of the Disclosure Network. So we'll talk about that next time. I want to talk about how some of the powers are trying to track that Disclosure Network. I think that's a good cliffhanger for everybody. We're going to discuss that, how people are being tracked that are trying to get the information out.
Perfect, guys. So you heard it there. We're going to discuss how the government is trying to shut down the Disclosure Network. November 19th, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Olivia, I want to thank you, and I want to thank all of our listeners that tuned in, because you also are a part of now the Disclosure Network. You're helping to spread the word and, get the facts out there.
Olivia, where can we find your books?
I was just about to ask that.
On Amazon. Yes, I have 2 books on Amazon. The Gray Mouse series. I'm working on a 3rd. The first 2 are called Gray Mouse, Sex, Space, and Mind Control. And the second is called Gray Mouse Purgatory.
We also, next show, got to talk about your books as well.
Sure.
Or maybe that'll be for the 3rd show.
Okay, sounds good.
We'll fit all this in no matter how many parts that it takes us, guys. We will make sure that you are informed.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, everybody. I'm Courtney.
I'm Sean.
We're Hill City Paranormal, HCP Paranormal Podcast. You can find us on TikTok or Facebook at Hill City Ghosts. Olivia, I'm assuming, do you have any socials, or are we just?
Yeah, I'm on TikTok. I'm the Gray Mouse.
Okay, I'm actually going to give you a follow personally.
I am too. Do you have YouTube or anything?
And we're going to go
just
from
the
there.
TikTok so far.
Awesome. TikTok, the Gray Mouse.
Yes.
The Gray Mouse.
Thank you so much for joining us. I hope everybody has a wonderful night.
Thanks for tuning in, y'all. We love y'all. Thanks for the support.
Bye, guys.
See you on the
Bye.
other side.
Thank you.